Hello. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Welcome to the kickoff of our new webinar series, The Convergence of Wetland Science and Technology. My name is Mike Connors. I'm the Director of Customer Success at Ecobot. Before we begin, I want to announce that this is going to be the first in a series of webinars that we're planning in response to so much interest that we received from both participants and the panelists that we have today. So today, we're going to introduce 6 very relevant case studies on topics such as drones, GPS receivers, GIS software, and more. We have with us today a diverse panel of experts consisting of scientists, technologists, project managers, regulators, and consultants. And thanks so much again to each of you for being with us to kick this off today. So in the hour that we have planned, we're really only going to be scratching the surface. So for future webinars in this series, we're going to dive deeper into each topic. So we'll look at multiple case studies in each topic area in the future and have a smaller topic-specific panel. And this will allow you as participants more opportunities to participate via question and answer and conversation with the panelists directly. So to get started, I'm going to introduce our featured speaker, Jeremy Schewe, Chief Scientific Officer at Ecobot. Jeremy's niche lies in the sensitive ecology and environment of our planet, from combining earth sciences and tech, raising capital and running successful businesses, to protecting thousands of acres of untouched wilderness. As an entrepreneur, ecologist, botanist, environmental consultant, and executive at a tech startup, he has over 16 years of project management experience in the Americas, South Pacific, Middle East, and Europe. He's passionate and devoted to projects that enable sustainable economic growth, dovetailed with the conservation of the world's natural resources and indigenous rights. He's a problem solver with an innate ability to recognize patterns socially as well as ecologically, geologically, and economically, and how they can either be amplified or tempered as necessary. Jeremy works in the interchange between people and sensitive habitats via wetland delineations, T&E surveys, biological inventories, botanical inventories, EIS, AIA for PSD applications, 404, 401 permits, and more, and has also been heavily involved as an expert witness for sensitive and at-risk projects. Jeremy, take it away.
Man, sometimes I feel myself turning red when I'm hearing a bio like that, and part of me is just like, and what I'd rather do is just be out in the wilds catching fish and cooking them over a fire and maybe doing some bow hunting, etc. But maybe some of you are in that same boat as well. So definitely looking forward to getting back out into the mountains more frequently here in the near future. So yeah, thanks for that opening, Mike. And first and foremost, wanted to thank Kim, one of the women on our panel here in the Society for Wetland Scientists, who helped initiate this concept. You know, we took something that was just a one-off that we grew together for a Society for Wetland Scientists webinar, and now kicking off into this series, which we're very excited about based on the level of interest that we've had in the subject matter. So today I'm excited to briefly share a little bit of my background, my road to the integration and convergence of wetland science and technology, and also in conservation, but then to actually take that dive into our specific case studies. And so, see how I can do a change in the slides here. Perfect. So hopefully you can see the whole screen. I know there's some different options and settings from your viewing side as to what you can look at. These are amazing panelists that have come together for this webinar, and look forward to having those very specific webinars diving in a little bit more deeply in future months. So thank you again, everyone, for joining this discussion today. So I'm going to go ahead and start off here. And I want to start with this quote from 19th century English Quaker and writer William Pollard. I believe that we are in a critical moment, not only in our lives, but in history. We're at a significant nexus. While most of the rest of the world is just now waking up to the fact that in the 21st century, we are still a part of biology and we're still connected to the earth, that we as scientists have a really vital role in helping to interpolate and ascend biological data, to bring a voice to the voiceless and put that into a location where that can be received, because otherwise humanity is most likely going to continue to divorce itself from the very ship that sustains us, our earth. And I also believe that we can help shape the future while maintaining our scientific integrity, continuing to promulgate conservation, preservation, long-term ecosystem research and management, and also to sync that with intelligent, responsible planning and growth. Our climate is changing. An invitation to you all, can we adapt? So this is what we're going to talk about in the next 25 minutes or so. We're going to look very briefly at my road so you can get an idea of where this whole concept came from, talk about the importance of digitizing data. Then we're going to jump directly into some of our case studies that we're going to be looking at today. And then we're going to look at the importance of workflow in the marriage of technology and wetland science. And then finally, just kind of ank it out with what's some of the near future of where wetland science and tech may be going. So all of you, I think, are pretty comfortable and aware of these three acts, which are essentially the federal laws that shape our industry. The organizations on the right are a lot of the federal and state agencies that have helped to shape me in terms of working with them either as a contractor, a subcontractor, or collaborating on projects. And so it's these collaborations that have helped to shape me as a scientist and many of you as well. And so here I just wanted to show just a very brief touch into my own history. So when I came out of school, I started working with the University of North Carolina at the Highlands Biological Station. I was stationed there for 2 years. We did a lot of work with endangered species propagation, natural areas management, and then doing inventories. I got into the consulting field back in my home city of Cincinnati, Ohio, with environmental quality management. Worked there for 2 years, wetlands, T&E, ecological restoration, and then started my own company, Unica Environmental. Unica is a Cherokee word for these mountains that we live in here in the Southern Appalachian Mountains, where I continued in that vein of working with threatened and endangered species, with various restoration projects, as well as a lot of large-scale wetlands assessments. And during that time, I also was invited to sit on the board for the Cloud Forest Conservation Initiative, where we have helped to protect 40,000 contiguous acres of primordial cloud forest in the highlands of Guatemala. So now that's protected in perpetuity. That's a volunteer gig that I'm involved with. Anybody ever wants to come down for a bio blitz, we usually get down in March. So it was about 1.5 years ago that I launched Ecobot with my co-founder, Lee Lance. And that kind of brings us to where we are today, taking all of this as science and launching someone who's very biocentric, I'm the eco, into a technologically driven portion of the world too. So convergence of wetland science and tech. We had fun putting this image together. It really speaks volumes as to what the importance of our role as scientists is in terms of digitizing data. Is critical to understand that in the microclimate of each of our individual lives, or perhaps in our organizations that we work with, it's easy to become fiercely independent and to remain so. But one of the things I love about our community is the ability to collaborate across organizations, across companies. You see that in the very panel that we have today. We have a lot of people who have worked together, a lot of people that have been in one moment in a competitive edge with one another, yet at the same time still have the capability of coming back together to working together. I love our community. And there's one thing that I've learned through those collaborations, both in working with wetland scientists and natural resource scientists to collaborate on larger efforts, but also with something such as the cloud forest, that it takes a team of people of multiple different angles and looking at a particular potential problem or an area that needs some discovery, to be able to tease out a better solution that's going to be a conglomerate of everyone's viewpoints. And I think that it's really crucial to understand that our responsibility, I believe, is to translate our biological and the abiological observations from the field into a digital format, because right now the world is moving in that direction. COVID-19 has projected that further along the path. What is happening is, if something does not show up in a digital format somewhere, it's not going to have a voice in policy. It's not going to have a voice in decision making. It's not going to have a voice in our human council, if you will. So I feel like it's really important for us to take a look at how we're digitizing our data and bringing that up into a place. So looking at digitizing data from a macro scale, how does the digitization of data allow us to look at macro scale planning, whether it's statewide, nationwide, global, looking at how to be more prepared for climate change, for shifts in storm and weather patterns. For those of you who live on the coast, this is very alive for you. For those of us who grew up or live in floodplains, it's very alive for us. How can we track and plan and implement things from that macro scale perspective? But then also the importance of the micro scale, like looking at our specific projects, our specific watersheds, or the specific preserves or conservation areas that you are involved in protecting or promulgating the long-term integrity of, so that we still have these gems on our planet and in our communities that we can interact with and learn from. And so it's really important from that micro scale, from even just you as a scientist observing in the field, what you're collecting, taking that data and putting it up into a format that other people can see, who maybe they can't get out to that site. Maybe they don't have the time to get out to the site. Really critical at this time in the game. So let's go ahead and take a dive in here. So this is what I thought tech and wetlands was supposed to look like. I grew up in the Star Wars era, of course. I thought that I needed an R2 unit to follow me around and do all the calculations. My co-founder reminded me that the computer I had in my pocket, which I didn't even know was a computer, my smartphone, was actually more powerful than the computer that NASA used to land units on the moon. Is fascinating to me. And what are most people using it for? Sending each other text messages and little goofy images. Like, here we have these amazing, powerful tools in our pockets, ready to go. And so I believe that it's really important that we utilize the tools that we have in this convergence of wetland science and tech to morph with what is happening in the time, so that we can make better observations, process model data better, and access that data, and thus influence natural resource management, planning, policy, etc. And so today we're going to take a look at and hear from some of our panelists as well, how drones, GPS receivers, GIS software, data collection apps, and other tech is shaping our industry, but also is being shaped by our industry. So let's take a look at our first group, so drones. So again, remembering that we're going to be talking about this from a top level, and we're going to go deeper into these conversations with upcoming webinars. So each of these is going to be kind of served from this level. So drones, I still call them drones. I know most people are calling, like the new term is, UAV, unmanned aerial vehicle. It's still a drone. That's easier for me to say, and it makes more sense. And I think that, many companies, including, Daniel Winham's company, who's on our panel today, they are offering drones as a service to help to minimize the level of effort, the level of cost that it takes to monitor wetlands, to monitor impacts, to monitor assessments of wetlands. With drones, essentially there's three types. There's the winged type that look like airplanes. You've got your quadcopters, which I'm most familiar with, which is what is in the photograph that you're looking at here. And then there's also the old school version of using balloons and blimps. And I know some people still use those. I remember at the SWS conference this past year, someone had made a presentation of all these tiles they had put together from a balloon. It was awesome. But essentially what drones allow for is controllable access to high resolution optics, photos, near infrared, thermal sensoring, LiDAR data, being able to look at what you have in the field. So let's take a look at the case study that I'm going to look at. So all of these case studies that I'm going to present to you are specific to projects that I've been involved with, because that is what I can speak to most confidently. So again, we'll jump into these more with future webinars. But so I'm most familiar with the DJI Phantom SR6. Own one of those. We have that as part of the Cloud Forest Conservation Initiative. For this particular project, we are using it to do aerial imagery to look at potential impacts to the edges of this primordial cloud forest, to see where the actual extent of the old growth forest is. I'm not sure if you all can see my arrow when I'm moving that around, but in the lower picture, you can see in the upper right corner, you can see where the impacts of some milpa style farming are, where they do the burns and growing corn, beans, etc. And so this is, we have really enjoyed the utilization of this. And so again, we will dive deeper into this in the near future, but this is one that I can speak highly for. GPS receivers. Most people in this industry are already using some type of GPS receivers, but just like smartphones, they change every few months, every few years, and there's always new things coming up. I I have been mostly in the space of using like a lot of the Geo 7000 series with Trimble for a lot of the wetland delineations and natural resource studies, stream assessments that I have been involved with. With GPS receivers, I think the most important thing to keep in mind from the top level is you essentially have 4 grades of receivers. You've got your military government grade, then you've got your survey grade, then you have your mapping grade, and then you have your consumer recreation grade. And you have varying levels of accuracy from supposedly sub-centimeter for government and military down to the consumer grade being 20 to 30 meter accuracy. However, one of the new waves of what we're exploring now in this industry, and what I've been able to play with a lot, are GPS receivers that are paired to smartphones. And so that's what we're going to look at as a case study today. So I've been using the Trimble R1 for about 1.5 years out in the field. If my talking image is not in the way, you can see about how big the image is up in the upper right corner. There's no interface. The interface has to pair via Bluetooth to a piece of hardware. So I pair it to my iPhone. And so down in the lower left picture, that's actually a screenshot from Ecobot. So I've got the receiver paired to my phone, and then the data is actually importing into Ecobot so that I can present that data as such. Been getting fairly good accuracy with the R1. Pretty excited about it. It's supposed to get sub-meter accuracy. Usually getting, if I've got pretty good satellite coverage, usually getting within 10 centimeters to a half a meter. If I haven't checked up on my GNSS input, sometimes it can be a little off by like 5 to 10 meters, which is still pretty accurate. Still learning how to refine that. And so I think that Darren's going to give us an opportunity to take a look at that later on in the panel discussion. GIS software. GIS software has revolutionized our ability to portray a story, to be able to convey data that's on the ground, macro scale, or even just project specific scale, and then distribute that or disseminate that to tell a very simple story that can be conveyed very quickly. I know that Megan Lang from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is talking about how she used to just send out paper maps to everyone. That was a part of what National Wetland Inventory used to be, to where it is now, where we get fairly granular data. And so I have been, over the years, have been using ArcMap. Prior to that, I was using USGS maps that I would Xerox in and then Sharpie in my project area. I'm sure some of you have been around long enough to have done that as well. About 1.5 years, migrated over to ArcGIS Pro. Really enjoy working with ArcGIS Pro. It took me a little bit of time to ramp up you know, kind of learning the new toolbox, if you will. But once I was comfortable with the toolbox, it takes me a matter of minutes, what used to take me several hours, you know, and scale that to a project. Hours might be a small project like this, where you're talking about 40 or 60 acres versus, you know, 4,000 acre project, which might take days, you know, slimming that down. So really looking at major efficiency gains there as well. And so Daniel Martin is here to share with us some conversations around that. So now next, of course, you know, is data collection apps, as well as other field applications, things that you can utilize in the field for helping with plant identification, things like that. The main thing with data collection apps is that there's varying types. You've got your consumer grade versus professional grade. So consumer grade might be something that may even have some peer support in it, such as like iNaturalist, but it's still very consumer based, versus something like Ecobot, which is very specifically tailored to a scientific workflow. And then there's also the difference between off-the-shelf software versus custom software. So off-the-shelf software would be something where you can kind of formulate your own utilization, something like Fulcrum or Survey 123, or something that you can do that is more custom built, such as Wetform or Ecobot, etc. Smartphones are already in our pockets. Everyone's carrying them in the field. It just makes sense to continue to collect data in this way to create some more of that efficiency. So specific case study with Ecobot, I think without getting too far into the details in the interest of time, just looking at the maximum amount of time savings that can be created by using something like this that allows for such a high automation of calculations and taking all of the observations that you have collected in the field and then putting them into a compiled report, and then having the integration with Esri software in order to map and project that. So let's take a look at some of the new tools coming up, some of the things that I'm pretty excited about, and I know some of the other more you know, macro scale interested folks are getting excited about is some of the machine learning and AI tools that are starting to become available, and for monitoring wetlands, monitoring potential impacts over time, and also doing some modeling that based on that machine learning and artificial intelligence. And again, looking at how, you know, what's the difference between augmenting a scientist's existing workflow and then what adds on to, or what can reduce and create more efficiency. So our first case study that I want to look at here, we have Jessica Norris representing Upstream. This is a project where we're looking at a large scale mitigation area, looking at making sure that things are in compliance, making sure that in terms of vegetative cover, in terms of where water is pooling on a given site, and being able to model that. And so pretty excited about where some of this stuff is going. The next case study is actually an up and coming case study that some of us on this call are hoping to jump in and do a case study collaboratively this summer. There's a new tool called the Munsell Capture, which is purportedly designed to be able to give us our readings for our soil colors. I'm not sure that it'll work just because of the complication, especially when you're dealing with modeled soils and glade soils, reduced soils. But we'll see what happens. I'm excited to kind of play with it. Otherwise, I don't mind still using the cards, but just again, kind of giving you a prompt of where some things are coming from the tech side. And I guess it remains to see whether this makes sense for us as scientists to utilize as well. So I'll just pause here. Again, very top level what we touched into here. We'll be launching into more of that in the next up and coming webinars, because we want to focus on our amazing panel that we have here today. But now that we've reviewed some of these top level technologies that are starting to become core to wetland science, this point, I think it's really important to understand, for me, it's very important to understand the relationship of why it's important to build this tech from inside of the industry and not from someone creating it from outside and then force feeding it to us. I think there's nothing more than I personally can find disconcerting than to have an outsider telling insiders what and how to do something, whether it is planners excluding stakeholders in conservation projects, or if it's policymakers denouncing scientific facts, or if it's technocrats force feeding us software or hardware that does not sync in with our current workflow. Is it just going to add more to what we're doing? So let's take a look at how one example of how workflow of wetland delineations works out. So again, technology should make our jobs easier. We want to try to force fit that plus sign through the triangle. We want our scope of work not to become more complicated, but to become easier, more efficient, more effective in the telling of a story, in the telling of, in the translation of scientific and planning information into a form that is going to be audible to lay people. So, you know, it's really critical, especially for those of us that are still working in the field, that we have tools that allow us to work offline. We don't always have a data connection when we're out in the field. And it's also really critical to have that integration of mapping and modeling and lookup tools built into it. So the main thing that I feel like is important about the way we're doing this webinar, the way we're setting up this panel, the way we work as scientific organizations from the nonprofit side to the for-profit side, is that we listen to what is needed, what is being asked for from our peers, and that we take that in mind as we're shaping and building and creating things, whether it's tools or policy or new teams for taking on new challenges or solutions. You know, we can't just charge ahead and expect everyone to get in line. Like, really thinking about the ecosystem that we exist in as scientists. So one thing I'm excited from the Ecobot platform is to announce that as of today, we're releasing to the App Store our version 2, which is going to have all of the our integration, our first level of integration with Esri's mapping tools that will work offline, available to all of our customers and partners. And so very excited for that. And so you can get that on the App Store here within the next 24 hours. At least that's what I was told before we were getting on the call. So just to wrap this up, where's this all going? Are our jobs, are our livelihoods at risk? Maybe COVID-19 might be slowing things a little bit down, but no, our jobs have become even more important at this point in time in the game. It's our jobs to interpret patterns, biological, abiological data, and to convert that into digital formats so that we can make better decisions going forward. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when the next pandemic comes, or when the next major policy comes, such as changes to the Waters of the United States rules. So my last slide here is just to talk a little bit about, you know, where things might be going. This is a World War II era Cipher Machine on the far right. This was used to send codes back and forth by the US and allies during World War II. And so one of the things that's also really critical in this, at this point in the game of wetland science and technology, is that we don't get so far ahead that a lot of the organizations that we're serving in helping to maintain the very laws that help to sustain our natural resources, that they would fall behind and not be able. So right now we create this great level of efficiency. Some of these organizations are looking to ways in the near future to be on their side, to actually be on the other side of that Cipher machine, to receive that raw data and then turn it into something digital that they can utilize as well, so that efficiency can be retained or gained by our government as well. So I wanted to thank you all for joining us for this portion, for listening to my little share here for the last half an hour. Especially want to thank Ecobot team for everybody throwing yourselves into trying to help make this happen. Obviously, we're not making any money doing this. This is part of our give back to our community, which we're super excited about. And again, thank you to all the panelists who are now going to be joining me for this next half of our time together in our discussion. So again, amazing team of people. I wish we were all in the same room together. I'm looking forward to seeing you all somewhere. I'm taking you out to dinner. We're gonna have some fun together. I don't know where it's gonna be. Maybe it's gonna be like southern tip of Illinois, like right in the center of the United States, where everybody can travel about the same distance. Anyway, again, thank you all for jumping on the call here. And I am going to close up my screen share, and then just would like to invite all of the panelists, when it makes sense, to take yourself off of mute. Hopefully everyone in the viewing audience can see all of their lovely faces, and some of them are just images coming through. But anyways, very excited. So our first discussion area is around adapting tech and workflow. And so our first question is, how has COVID-19, the pandemic, how has it impacted your business or your organization's use of adopting and existing and emerging technologies? And how do you suppose that will inspire further innovation and developments in the future? So I'm going to start with Amber down in the Gulf.
Hey, so I think amidst all of the chaos of the pandemic, a really positive byproduct has been, innovation, and that my company has, used this time to kind of catapult us into using this, different forms of technology in order to do two things: better interact with our clients and also collect data in a more efficient and safe way. And it's interesting because previously, I think my company was a little shy to jump into some of these technologies, and COVID's actually allowed us to sort of forced us into this new experience. And I have a couple of examples that I'll share briefly. One being, I have a compliance monitoring project down here in Louisiana. My inspector has been literally, taking his notes, filling out his inspection form, using a pen and a piece of paper. And the client's always been shy to accept sort of new technological ways of collecting that data just from a cost efficiency standpoint. But because things have been it's been so critical to keep my sub safe recently, we're going to be transitioning to it's called Survey 123 for ArcGIS, which is going to allow us to collect that data real time without needing any, remote satellite. And then it'll immediately get to us, so it'll be happening quicker and more efficiently. And this is just, one example. Others being, that we're using WebEx now in order to visit with clients, which is, a more cost-efficient way to engage. And absolutely, we will continue to use this type of technology even after COVID is behind us. So, yeah, it's exciting times. I think really positive byproduct of kind of a chaotic, sucky situation.
Great, thank you, Amber.
Yeah.
Kim, how about you from the kind of the nonprofit side?
Right, I'll kind of talk about it from the Society of Wetland Scientists side. I'm the chair of the webinar committee, and it's kind of interesting timing with having Jeremy having done our last webinar. But mostly I want to focus on, how it's impacted our e-communication and just kind of our connection with our wetland community. And SWS started our webinars back in 2015, and we've been using the GoToWebinar platform, and we've been recently talking about ways that we could improve the program. And this kind of catapulted us into having to figure out ways to do this e-connection with the members and others that were interested in wetland science. And so we are doing a number of different things, but we are switching to the Zoom platform, which everybody is becoming much, much more comfortable with, because we've been doing this during the time where we've been in isolation or stay at home. And I have been teleworking for 6 weeks now, but so all the things that I am working on with SWS are going through now. We have a Zoom platform for that, for our webinars. Also, SWS as an organization is trying to adjust to the fact that we won't be having our annual meeting this year, whether it be postponed or canceled. And so there's talk about how we can still try to connect during that time. We're talking on the webinar committee how we can make get that connection. And so I think that that's kind of changed things that we were kind of iffy about. We've gone headlong into them because we had to. I know a lot of times when there's new technology, I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I know how to do it the old way. I don't really need the new way. And then if I'm forced into it, I say, this was way better, more efficient. And so I think that that is really one of the big things, is being able to connect and using these different platforms that have kind of catapulted us into it. Work-wise, I work for a state agency, and we're using Microsoft Teams. It was available to us before. Never really did it because we didn't have to. And now we are relying on it all the time, teleworking. So we're doing Teams meetings, and it's actually really useful. I was actually doing ArcGIS and Envy today with a coworker of mine, and he was letting me do the controls and kind of giving me a little tutorial. So it's amazing the kind of things that we can do. Thank you for asking.
Great, thanks, Kim. Well, Rick, how about you from Wetland Association side?
Yeah, well, hi. These are surely strange times for sure. But yeah, I'm going to echo a little bit of what Kim said in the sense that we have had to look into new ways to communicate and conduct meetings, and we've been doing Zooming a lot and learning a lot about that. But the other thing we've talked about too was how to kind of keep engaged with the organization, keep it engaged. And so we have thought about doing webinars, and we haven't specifically done any yet, but we've got some scheduled. We worked with the Water Resource Research Institute here in Raleigh. They have an annual conference every March, which didn't happen, but we approached them and said, we'd love to work with you to maybe schedule some of the papers, especially the ones we're interested in, was the wetlands papers. We've been a sponsor of that conference for about 3 years now. So they said, hey, that's not a bad idea. And so it's working. They've done one session that wasn't specifically to wetlands, but we're going to have 2 wetland sessions coming up the end of May and June. And so that's good. That's a good way to kind of keep the organization visible and our supporters more engaged also. Another example is that we did get on the monitoring side, which I can never seem to get out of my life and probably don't really want to. We did get a grant to start a citizen science volunteer wetland monitoring program. And with COVID-19, it pretty much got stopped in its tracks. We got a certain point, but we never got to start doing the field work that we need to do and things like that. But it has gotten me and others thinking about how we might do some things differently, like more remote sensing and more greater use of maybe drones. We have talked about doing drones just because they'd be fun for sure. But yeah, we've been talking about doing drone flyovers and seeing how we can use that data and so forth. And then the other thing too, just one more thing, is that I know when I worked for the state, we collected a huge amount of wetland data from 200 sites across the state. And it's vegetation data, it's soil data, it's amphibian data, it's macroinvertebrate data, it's hydrology data. And one of the things we can never really do is analyze the data in any reasonable way, because we had to almost get ready to start on the next grant before we could actually get there. So we just ended up summarizing things a little bit more. And I think some real data, sort of AI kinds of tools to look at the data and pick out patterns and trends and things like that would be really great to consider. And here I go collecting more monitoring data again. So that's something to think about. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Rick. So, things are changing and shifting. So I guess, the next thing I'd like to pose is, how does how are companies and organizations adapting their workflow and management around changes in technology? So I thought maybe we'd start with Megan from U.S. Fish and Wildlife.
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Jeremy. And I have a lot to say, but I'm going to have to limit myself because NWI, of course, has been around for over 40 years. And so we've seen a lot of technological change. So in the beginning, we had an army of folks that were drawing lines using pens on Mylar overlays, looking at analog aerial photography. And then, of course, now we have folks working digitally with digital imagery. Sometimes it's satellite imagery, and they're working within a GIS environment. We used to be limited to having individuals check for quality. Now we have automated verification tools. We used to be limited to folks using pieces of paper out in the field, and now we've got our iPads, and we've got Collector, and we've got Survey 123, and we're completely geared up in the field. We have changed not just the way we operate, but the types of ancillary data that we use. We use base imagery to create the maps. So that's usually the aerial photographs or the fine spatial resolution multispectral satellite data. But in terms of the ancillary data, we used to use stereo pairs, and now we use LiDAR data. And so things have changed quite a bit. And I think that the quality of our data has improved, and the speed at which we create the data has improved, but we still don't have the magic button. It still is not a purely automated process. We still need those people to create our maps, partially because our classification system is just so detailed. So we are working to increase automation, but we are still very much a paired manual automated production shop. Does that cover some of the bases, Jeremy?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, yeah, we're gonna have a whole another conversation around
Right.
that at some point for sure. But thank you, Megan.
Sure.
Well, let's go over to Scott from the consulting side.
Yeah, definitely from the consulting side, just in the last few years alone has been huge. We used to go to having paper maps for everything, similar to what Megan was saying, is everything you went out there with was your soil mapping, your NWI mapping, everything was in your hand. You were sketching things and then going back into the office. Well, now with a lot of Collector and Survey 123 and things like that, and on an iPad, I can have 5 or 6 different crews at the same time. You have all your due diligence right there in your hand, things that you had to do a lot before and after, which cuts down on a lot of time in the office, especially if you're very fast paced and you have people all over in different states working. And now with cloud-based products where you can sync your data instantly, so project managers can capture and see what you're doing, offer up, and maybe catch mistakes. And I think that's been the big thing, is we'll find that you forgot photos for a site, or you forgot this on a site, and before you leave the site, drive 3 hours away and don't go back, we can kind of catch a few of those things now going into it, which is huge for us and huge as far as a QA/QC standpoint. So it's definitely helped progress and make things better and cleaner and just a better overall product for everyone.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Scott. So I want to kind of shift gears here about a little bit and go more specific into some of the mapping advances. So just want to hear from a couple of our organizations in terms of significant changes to your technology in respect to wetland science, delineations, monitoring, mitigation, restoration, etc. So I'd love to hear from Daniel first, from Esri.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. There's a lot to dive into here, but I'll try to just hit on some of the high points. I think that the biggest advance from where I'm sitting is this advent of web GIS. And so where most people are familiar with Esri software through ArcMap or maybe even ArcMap Pro, That's actually can be visualized as one node in a vast ecosystem of connected maps, apps, and data, which then support a company-wide workflow from field work into surveys and beyond, and really adds a lot of improvements and efficiency gains and supports collaboration. Another really big asset, I think, has been the Living Atlas, which is a authoritative, curated group of data from various sources that is made available to people on the WebGIS platform. So as someone who has made many base maps throughout the day, this is such a resource to be able to not have to look back and find the most recent version of any given type of data. It's all right there. An easy to visualize example of this WebGIS is how data that could be gone and gotten in the field can be synced to an organization's authoritative data and then made available to the rest of the company to use in whatever their particular workflows are. And shout out to Ecobot and all the hard work that they've done. I think that it's a great example of integrating with Esri platform now that the data that can be gotten in Ecobot can be pushed into an organization's ArcGIS online and authoritative data. So I think that collaboration and this ecosystem of different maps and apps is from my perspective, the biggest advance.
Great, thank you, Daniel. Well, let's jump down to Jesse from Upstream.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So kind of the two main ways that Upstream helps in this regard is synthesizing all available commercial and public domain satellite data. And these satellites have been collecting information for the last several decades. And so kind of the primary ways in which we're working with folks is one, before you go to the field is how can you see the most recent image from your site? And then understand, how has that changed over the last couple of years to then monitor those ecosystems. And the satellites are capturing just, true color, what you're used to seeing imagery, but also a lot of information about vegetation and water patterns. So we can automatically analyze what is the history of vegetation changes on this property. And then if you did an intervention, are you yielding the expected outcomes to be able to monitor that a little bit more consistently prior to getting to the field? So those are kind of the two main ways in which we're thinking about alleviating some of the challenges people are having when you can't actually get to the field and being able to monitor remotely.
Great, thank you, Jesse. Well, now when I'm a little bit closer to the ground, Daniel, come in with that on drones, please.
Sure. And so in general, I think some of the biggest changes with drones have happened in the last few years, and they're going to accelerate from now on because, you think back to 2016 is when most people really started significant drone programs. And then, you had large organizations with about a 2-year tail on that. So you've got in the last 2 years, people really starting to adopt drones. And, just from my personal experience, when I started flying projects in 2016, I had a drone that was, 3 feet wide and cost almost $10,000. You put all this stuff together and, that's not including the sensors and all that stuff. And then, it was a huge all-day event to go fly a site. And, last week I flew 5 sites in one day and my drone's a little bit bigger than my phone. And so I think that's going to continue to change. And another thing that I'm really excited about as far as innovation in the drone space is, LiDAR sensors. And I've had a lot of people talk about that. And, I'm really excited that everybody's been mentioning workflow because nothing is more important than how stuff fits in your workflow. If it doesn't work for you, why are you doing it? And so, it makes sense to think about these things ahead of time, but, you've got providers going with LiDAR sensors that are, not $200,000, but might be $2,000, giving you, say, a 5 centimeter spec instead of a 3 centimeter spec or, something like that, to where you can be in the field. This is, how I envision it. Fly your drone before you start, process it while you're getting set up and maybe getting your flagging stuff ready, getting your vest on, starting out your day. And after you've already started walking the site, you're going to come back and switch out your gear and you're going to have a mobile LiDAR of your entire site in the middle of the first day. On a 4-week job or a 4-month job or 4-hour job, it's going to be cost effective and it's going to save you time and it's going to increase the deliverables and the quality of it. And it's going to allow you to charge a better price point if you're, a private provider. If you're a public provider, it's going to get you data where you would never really get it before. And not only that with mobile LiDAR, but they're just regular RGB cameras. I mean, I've been flying wetland sites for a long time. And if you continue that on a set pace, and this is true of any industry, you're going to extract things that you didn't know you could extract. There's data there that you're not seeing, or the way that it plays into, say, your field points, or maybe on, things that are buttoned up on your project and things like that. You just never know what you're going to find. I do a lot of environmental due diligence. And you always want to see, we can kind of tell where the stream, you get the NWI and you get the NHD, you put the drone imagery together, and it just works. And I use ArcGIS Pro for that, so thank you, Esri. But I'm really thankful for the drone space. I think it's innovating. I usually tell people that there's a significant industry change every 6 to 8 months. So, don't anticipate what you're getting or what you're starting now is going to be the same thing you're going to be doing 2 years from now. If you're not changing every day, you're kind of going to get behind. So that's really exciting for me. Keeps me busy. I have pretty good job security there. But anyway, I really encourage everybody to use drones. They're the best. I get really excited about it. So I'll try to limit my time. But anyway, there's a lot of innovation there, and we can spend some more time on that in another webinar.
Great, thank you, Daniel. And we're gonna meet in northern Georgia sometime and have a dogfight with our drones.
Nice. Well, I have insurance, so it's fine.
All right, I don't. So, but mine's also an old school tank. It's gonna be like a World War II era version versus whatever you have.
I have to pull my my Inspire out of the closet.
All right, so I just want to kind of flip it back, and Megan, how do you think some of these advances in technology may impact the way we would conduct wetland science from like a data perspective and also from modeling or planning perspective?
That's a deep question, Jeremy. I could take that in a lot of different directions. I may have to just pick one. So you mentioned modeling and data collection. I guess where I'm most comfortable is, of course, mapping. So are you asking me to tie in some of the technologies that have been mentioned to mapping and where we could take it in the future? Is that sufficient? Okay, wonderful. So I would say that we have already begun to do that, and we've been doing it through time. And I mentioned some of the ways. We've been from analog to digital. I mean, that was a big jump. We've been from aerial photographs to satellite images. That was a big jump. One thing that I didn't mention is the way that we distribute data. So of course, we used to send out hard copy maps. People would send us they wouldn't send us an email, would they? Gosh, they'd actually call us on the phone, or they'd send us a letter and we'd send them a hard copy map. But now, of course, we've got the mapper, and folks can see our data and use our data real time via our mapper. We also have web services, and we offer a function where folks can print PDF maps of our data. And so it took us about 15 years between 1975 and 1990 for folks to print 1 million maps, or for us to print 1 million maps and send them to our users. But within the last 4.5 years, using the print function on our online mapper, folks were able to print themselves 1 million maps. So in less than a third of the time, we were able to distribute the same amount of information. So we are definitely reaping the benefits of technological advances at NWI. One of the things that we are focusing in on now is how can we pull in better ancillary data so that we can not only map more efficiently, so save costs, but we can also produce higher quality data. And so we've been working on that. And of course, we've decided to pull in LiDAR. LiDAR is huge. So far, we've been primarily using it as just kind of background imagery, just as a plain DEM. I'd like to use more topographic metrics I'd like to get more advanced in terms of the metrics that we use, you know, TWIs and whatever we can pull in. I think that sometimes when you let the computer analyze the data, it can come up with information that you can't necessarily see with your eyes. And I think that's definitely true of LiDAR. Another way that we're looking to pull in advancements is that we still haven't completed mapping in Alaska, and that's kind of our last frontier. And it's really tough to map in Alaska. I mean, partly because we're just limited in the imagery that we can, that's available to us. I mean, for many years we were limited to spot imagery, and it was just pulled in from all sorts of different dates, and it was color balanced in a weird way, and it was just less than ideal on many levels. And so what we've done now is we've worked with researchers from the University of Maryland to pull in a combination of Sentinel, or well, actually to analyze Sentinel data in part using the Landsat historic record, partially through Google Earth Engine to derive what we're calling subpixel water fraction, which is not just binary information on inundated, non-inundated, but percent of the pixel that's inundated. And so you're able to resolve much smaller water features that way. And we're using that as really critical ancillary data that not only allows us to more accurately map wetlands, but we're hoping that it will allow us to avoid field work and minimize our helicopter and plane time, because the helicopter and plane time is really expensive. So by using the satellite imagery, we could hopefully sustain accuracy and save costs.
Great, thank you. I know I don't want to cut out field time, but you know, mostly I'm gonna just change gears here a little bit, because one of the questions that we've been getting from folks in the audience is around the accuracy of R1s and what types of real-time corrections are available, how accurate they are. And so I wanted to give Adam an opportunity to speak to that from the consulting side.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jeremy. So in my experience, it's pretty accurate. I mean, for my field applications that I use on the consulting side, I usually get that sub-meter accuracy, which you know, for that device is pretty ideal, especially for the price point too. I mean, that's a huge factor for the R1. It comes at a really nice price point, and it's super durable. And it's accurate for you know, the applications of delineation, and that sub-meter accuracy is really fantastic. And certainly too, I think that, and this is probably something everyone realizes, is that there are limitations to most of the GPS units we're going to use. So multipath and canopy cover is certainly going to impact you know, that accuracy and how long we need to stay at a point, you know, compared to open meadow areas. So taking that into consideration, and I think everyone who has used, you know, the 7000 series for an XT or an XH is used to that. But the R1 does really perform well. Maybe some low hanging fruit here, so to speak, to keep in mind. It's super rugged, and I think you can attest to that as well, Jeremy. I think you put it through its paces as well. Super rugged. For me, I can use the R1 a full day without it being charged. I mean, that's a full charge and a full day on that. The one thing I keep in mind, and I think a lot of people are in this realm, but maybe just a little hint, is when you're using your device, you know, as field scientists, we're in the field. So make sure that you bring a battery backup for your device that you're using, because for me, you know, you're going to run your R1, which is fantastic, but when your smartphone or your tablet goes down, you know, midway through, so a lot of times I bring a charged battery backup that I can use in the field, you know, just stuff like that. The other thing too is how you protect your smartphone or your tablet in the field, you know, whether that be a protective case, waterproof, like that. So, you know, stuff like that kind of, it seems trivial to just on a low level basis, but really that's something that really comes into play, because we're running a lot of different apps, not just collector on our smartphones or tablets. A lot of us are using a lot of different apps at the same time. So really be cognizant of your device that's actually collecting the data. It's gonna drain your battery pretty quick. So, but overall, it's pretty accurate piece of equipment that's really fantastic. So.
Great, thank you, Adam. And I know it's 1:30 now, so if anybody needs to cut off, we are recording this. We're going to take about 5 or 6 more minutes just to kind of round off our conversation. I know battery-wise for myself using the R1 in the field, if I'm working hours like I've worked with some of you who are on this call or on this panel out in the field, if we're working 12 or 14 hours in the field, we definitely need that booster charger. I'm not working union hours here. So so what I wanted to do is now switch and go over to the hardware provider side. And Darren, have you come in respect to the R1 as well?
Well, thanks. I think Adam covered a lot of good information there. It's good to see that you're achieving, for the most part, the accuracy that you require. Yeah, Adam brought up a really good point. GPS and GNSS technology, we're still receiving very weak radio signals from 11,000 plus miles in space. And you do have to be aware. The R1 is a nice, nearly a playing card packed sized GNSS receiver. And it's tempting to throw it in a backpack, the top pouch on your backpack, or throw it in a shirt pocket or a vest pocket. But the best practice would be to make sure that it does have an unobstructed view of the sky, so that you do get the accuracies that you're expecting in the field. A lot of times people connect to a real-time source, and there's a couple of ones. There's a free one in the US called WAS that probably most people are aware of. Trimble also has a real-time satellite delivered correction system. It does require a subscription, but it allows your R1 to get down to about the 30 centimeter to 1 foot or 1 foot accuracies. I'm not sure what is needed in this industry, but it sounds like sub-meters quite practical for most users. And I know we're running short on time, but I think, Jeremy, we have plans to do another one of these where we can deep dive into more GNSS technology. So I'm looking forward to that.
Awesome. Thank you, Darren. Certainly appreciate you joining us here.
Sure.
So I want to pivot a little bit and talk about the use of, say, ArcMap versus ArcPro versus using open source type data. And so I wanted to see if either Todd or Scott, we didn't actually get to check in on this. Do either of you have experience using the ArcPro or ArcGIS online? Or are you guys using ArcMap? Maybe both of you guys could take yourselves off and just chime in a little bit there.
So
Todd's got a smile. All right, we're ready.
Well, this is Todd. Yeah, we're basically using the ArcMap in the office at this point. Esri's actually offering some online courses on ArcPro right now, and so we've got some of our staff taking those, looking at transitioning to that. Been really impressed with the projects, the product so far, but we use ArcMap for everything. Maybe something most people don't use it for is we actually use it for wetland mitigation design. We're making full engineering plans using Arc, which is can be somewhat of a challenge, but it's what we're good at, what we're used to, and we're not using CAD for that. We're drawing full engineering set plans in the Arc platform. So I have not used the open source software at all.
Yeah, I know some people are using like QGIS too and have had some pretty good success with that. What are you guys using, Scott?
We're actually transitioning more away from ArcMap. We still do both. We do a lot of ArcMap for our day-to-day just because it's a quick, clean map system that we can get. What we like using ArcPro for is that we can edit things live, and that's been very helpful. We can also move large data sets quicker. It doesn't bog down the computers as much. We have a lot of guys that remote into a computer and pull things that way. So instead of having to bring everything down and save it to a local source, they can kind of do it live. And that's really helped us. Like I said, you go from one site to the next and we can pull things down quicker and check things. And it's really sped us up quite a bit. So we're fully starting to transition into that since we use ArcGIS Online a lot. And and things like that. It seems to work really well for us.
All right, great. Thanks, Scott. Well, Daniel, one of the things that I hear Daniel Martin, one of the things I hear come up in conversations a lot, I even see some of the questions coming in on my chat session down below is, just in respect to, efficiency of the different tools that are available, but also costs. Like, why would someone choose to use software as a service versus, using, an off-the-shelf software? You're on mute. There you go.
There we go. Yeah, that's a great question. So I think that the best that I could say from personal experience is that I have found the price points have lowered significantly over the last 5 or 10 years, while the functionality has increased. But ultimately, it comes down to a case-by-case decision that needs to be made, looking at it holistically to see if the efficiency gains of software such as like Esri software is actually going to offset that price. And I think that oftentimes the decision, that the answer might be yes, but I would advocate everyone to do the analysis yourself and look at that.
Great. Thank you, Daniel. And Jesse, I know you guys are offering software as a service as well, to some extent. So how would you handle a question like that in terms of looking at whether, it's off-the-shelf software or if it's, something that is more of a service based?
Yeah, great question. I would echo a lot of what Daniel had said. Similarly, it's thinking about what are the specific workflows that you're looking to automate. And so what we try to do from the upstream perspective is what are similar workflows across a lot of different organizations so we can build a uniform process that many people can utilize. And then if there's specific customization, then let's try to answer questions that a lot of other people are also asking. So it doesn't have to be a one-off, really specific, really expensive cost. Yeah, I think that's the short answer.
Great, thank you. And so I just want to switch back over to like more from the consulting side and see, Adam, from, your perspective, when you're looking at things as an educator and thinking about people getting out in the field more and how they're mapping and projecting things, where do you see some of the differences in terms of, off-the-shelf software versus software as a service playing in?
For me, I think that as I wouldn't, I certainly have experience when it comes to the GIS platforms that I use online, but certainly the support has always been, a functionality for me that I use. I don't have years and years and years of experience when it comes to GIS, but certainly from a support standpoint, something when you always have that as you can reach out to folks through Esri if there's a question that comes up. So it certainly helps from that end, and I certainly use that often. They have quite a wide array of free webinars and tutorials that have really helped me, to be honest with you. And it's really been practical. And two, just from a standpoint of using that R1, they work hand in hand. So, and that's another reason why I like that R1 in combination with Arc Online. As soon as you're in the field, you submit your data if you're working online, and it's simultaneous to Arc Online. So it's really unique, and certainly from an efficiency standpoint is what we've been talking about here. Really hits and checks a lot of boxes for me and in my company, and two, from an education standpoint. So
great, thank you, Adam. So just want to kind of pause there, and we've kind of maxed our time here. So one last question I want to just dive into with a couple folks, is just, right now with COVID-19, a lot of people are concerned about their jobs. If we're creating tools that are creating better efficiency in our workflow, there are some people that have some concerns with that. And so one of the questions is, in respect to this particular field requires a lot of experience. It requires a fair amount of training. And, if you're not a taxonomist, to be a really deep in on the soil side, to be able to bring one strong suite of tools to the table. is there, one of the questions that I hear come up sometimes in these conversations and has popped up in a few of the chat bubbles here is, will tech replace scientists? And so, first I'd love to hear from Todd from the perspective of an educator and a consultant, as also as a professor at a university.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I don't think we're there yet. I think that we need people with expertise. We need botanists and ecologists and other natural resource professionals, really for the power of human observation. I think we are currently better than tech at observing the landscape and making decisions based on what we're seeing. Does the tech get there? I think we're a ways off. I think the positive that is behind the tech is scientists. And so maybe the jobs are shifted some. I'm a field ecologist, so I feel pretty strongly that we need people out in the field. I know a lot of the GIS guys think that they can do a lot, maybe more than I think they should from the office. But I think we still and always will need people in the field making personal observations to help feed that tech.
Great, thank you, Todd. Well, and Scott, love to hear from you from the consulting side.
Yeah, I mean, just to reflect on what Todd said, mostly behind all of these things, I mean, just look at yourself, Jeremy. Scientists are building these things to help us, and that's great, and these are great tools to use, but professional judgment goes into a lot of what we do. Wetland delineation is not a black and white thing, and you need to be able to go out there, see what something looks like in the spring, see what something looks like 3 weeks later, 4 weeks later. I mean, many of times I've gone to sites just to see progression, and that's just something that I don't think can be automated. And automation is nothing new. I mean, it's been trying to take jobs for years, but there's nothing to trial and error. I mean, we're creating these data sets for a long time. I mean, when you do research, it's not just, hey, I went out there for this month and I looked at this. I went out every month for the last 5 years to build this huge data set to use it for everybody. And that's how we're building like the NWI stuff. This is how we're base building on foundations of everything that we're using. So you still need professional judgment, you still need skilled people, and you need to be able to train your skilled people also to be able to use these new technologies.
Great, thanks, Scott. And Kim, you want to chime in?
Yeah, I just wanted to give a real quick, specific example from the Water Management District. We were going to use some satellite imagery to do some vegetation mapping. And it was kind of our little test into getting the AI all figured out. And we set up some training data, and there's a couple individuals that this is an area I've been working in the wetlands for 30 years, so I kind of know them really well. And we were specifically wanting to map cattail. And so the folks that were really good with the ArcGIS and NV software and things like that, and another person with using statistics said, okay, well, let's get these points down and figure them all out and see what it does. And I took a look at it as someone who knows the ground and said, oh yeah, it's getting these parts wrong. And so we usually actually had to use me as a really integral part and substitute me for any one of you that has experience on the ground with the resource that you're working in to say, okay, this is what this is, this is what it is. And I trained the AI so it could train itself. So I think you really cannot take us out of it and it's also different in different scales. If you're doing something like drone work, you still have to have the person that's familiar with the area. So I think it's no way it's ever going to replace us, but it's going to make us do our job a lot faster, and we can do a lot more work.
Great, thank you, Kim. And I want to come back and kind of end cap with Amber, because I know being down in the Gulf, there's a lot of people that have lost jobs in the oil and gas industry there. And you and I have been talking about that a lot over the last couple of years. But just kind of cap off, where do you sit when you're watching this whole thing from the perspective of, is tech going to replace scientists? You're on mute.
Yeah, 100% agree with what everyone said. There's no way that it could replace the professional judgment that we all have gained over the decades, that we've been working in this field. And I guess, I mean, it really ultimately is, reducing human error. So, of course we're humans err. So I think to round it off, yeah, I think technology is amazing and it's helpful. There's no way it could replace us, at least not anytime soon. Probably, I hope not within my lifetime, right? Or yours. Job stability in Louisiana is necessary right now. So, so yeah, I think, it's simply reducing human error, making us work more safely and more efficiently. And so that's my thoughts, I guess.
Great, thank you, Amber, and thank you
Yeah, thank you.
everyone. Thank you everyone for staying over about 15 minutes. Really appreciate that. I mean, we could probably continue this conversation, which is why we're going to roll it out into some additional webinars that hyper specifically focus in on some of these tech areas. We had 200 people register for this event today, and I think we had about 160 plus people that actually showed up. I didn't see the metric because I was giving the presentation at the time, but when I came back, I saw that there were still 146 people at that time. So thank you all for taking some time out of your days. I think this is a great utilization and way for our community to gather together and to share information, and excited about what's coming next. So I'm going to go ahead and mute myself and turn it over to Mike to end cap us. And thank you all again, panelists. You were all awesome. I'm sure everybody out in the audience is giving you a warm round of applause right now. And yeah, you all are great. Look forward to actually physically seeing you at some point in the near future.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Great job, everyone. This was really interesting. I can see a lot of conversations kind of just starting to bubble up as we were close to running out of time. So it's really encouraging to see, such a lively conversation. We really look forward to doing more of these webinars, and we're very, very interested in your feedback. So please feel free to reach out to Jeremy or myself directly. Let us know what you thought. Let us know what you want to talk more about. Look out for a survey coming from me that will just kind of encapsulate that question and let us collect what everybody's really thinking about that, as well as I'll be sending out a link to the recording in case anyone had to jump in late or wants to see something again. So again, thank you so much to our panelists for spending the time today, and for everyone who was able to join us. We really appreciate it.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks again, and take care. Stay safe, everyone. See you soon.